3, 2, 1. What's going on, everyone? It's time for another Ash on Comics review. Haven't done a review in a long time, not counting the last video that was an Ash on Comics video. This is going to be a short form review. I got a timer set. I'm going to try not to go much beyond 10 minutes. We'll see how I do. I'm a little out of practice. This in front of you is Prodigy, the Icarus Society, issue number 1. Now, this is by one of my favorite writers in comics, Mark Millar, who I often just call Mark Millar, just to separate him from the other Millars in comics. So if I just say his last name, Millar, who am I talking about? So often you're going to hear me say Mark Millar. A lot of people call him by that too. I don't mean any disrespect. It's just so everyone knows who I'm talking about. This is the sequel to the original Prodigy series, which I did a review of way back in the early days of my channel in 2018. And that was when I was still part of Comicsgate. This was the first issue of that. And I went and watched it before doing this, just to kind of reminisce. I was like, did I review this? I know I got the series, I'm pretty sure. Woo, man. Not that I'm super great YouTuber these days, but that was a rough video. So if you're curious to see what Ash on Comics was doing back in 2018, in the early days, and that was a non-digital review. I had a paper comic in front of me, Zach style, but I cover this series. I think I only did the first 5 issues. I don't think I ever did the 6th issue. But this was it. Overall, like, really, really cool series. I think I was overly harsh on it when I did my review. I think I was really just in the whole super nitpick every little thing. In hindsight, this series was really cool. Now, what am I doing? Go back to talk out loud. It helps me think of what I'm doing because I've got the Bidenitis. So this is the second series, almost 4 years later. Can you believe that? Crazy how times have changed. Now, this is not the same artist. The original series was Raphael Albuquerque, which I'm not a big fan of, but for some reason his art was okay in that series. Probably some of it was better stuff. This, I don't know this Matteo Buffagni, but I went back and compared. It's actually quite similar in style, so it's not quite as jarring as a difference as, say, what was that, the Jupiter, what was the Jupiter's Legacy books, where you have Frank Quietly, and then you go on to these way different artists. Anyways, this book is really cool. I think it starts off possibly even better than the first one. Now, the way these books are done, and the best thing I can say about Prodigy 1 and this one, it seemingly, is that they're written like Hollywood action films, right? This was designed like, if I read this, when I read the first one, the whole time I was like, Will Smith should be the leading man. Like, this, just do a movie about this. You know, he's got the partnership with Netflix. I'm really surprised that hasn't happened. Something similar, at least. It's a cool book. Now, these are separate stories, and they're self-contained. This feels like a sequel, but it feels self-contained. So you don't need to read the first one to read this, right? In fact, there's a couple little scenes that are replayed just to, I don't know, just to echo. They don't rehash anything in the previous one because, again, this is its own story. It's kind of like Die Hard 1, Die Hard 2. You can watch Die Hard 2 without seeing Die Hard 1, and it's going to work. I would still recommend reading the first one before this if there's an option, simply because, quite honestly, I think the first one will be more impactful if you know nothing about the character. This book, you don't necessarily need to know, but it's really more for the sake of the first series. Now, either way, the original series was 6 issues. I don't know how many issues this is. I think it's only 4 or 5, but I don't know. And it starts off, this is the typical Mark Millar expedited storytelling at its finest. Get you up to speed in 3 pages. We get the dialogue, or the narration. This used to be Maliha Syed, a credit controller from Westbrook in Maine. This was Wendell Oakes, father of 3 and a... Sorry, this was Wendell... My dog is, you probably can hear in the background. This is the typical thing, and it's not just her. When I was house sitting, as you can see if you want to go back, the 2018 video, the dogs would always, when I do video, they would just go, oh, it's time to drink and make noise. It's almost like they just know, like they're trying to get attention. In fact, she did this on my last video. If you watch my Batman, Ash on Batman, she'll go hours and hours and hours without drinking. And then as soon as I start recording, I don't know how it's picking up on this mic, whether you heard it or not. So I just was going to talk through it. Here we go. This was Wendell Oakes, father of 3 and a high school teacher from Rockland, 70 miles away. Bruce Hickey was driving an 18-wheeler when his body exploded with such force that he not only shattered the windshield, but blew the cabin doors off too. Mara Klein had been riding on a public transport. The authorities did not know what to make of all these random people with no obvious connections, spontaneously exploding in a single afternoon. The local police chief called the mayor to say he didn't have a single lead. The mayor called the governor and said the federal help was urgently needed. The governor called the Pentagon. And the Pentagon called Edison Crane. And that's how the book opens. Edison Crane is the main character. He is the Prodigy. And he's an action star. The best way I can describe it is if you mixed Reed Richards with James Bond and maybe Daredevil, you would have Edison Crane. He is a genius beyond normal real world genius. He's like comic book level genius. It's absurd. And I have to say too, the biggest thing, what I love about this book and the previous one too, is that somehow Mark Millar managed to write a story about a Mary Sue and make it work. Because in all intents and purposes, Edison Crane is a complete Mary Sue, right? It's almost like someone was making fun of Mary Sue's and how stupid they just and Mark Millar was like, hold my beer. I can make this work. And this works. I've never read a story with I hate Mary Sue's with a passion. Mark Millar found the way to make it work, because the whole premise of this book is that he's a Mary Sue. Like that is, it's like, what could you throw at a Mary Sue, right? Like we know we're going to write the most awesome, perfect character that's skilled in every seemingly way. Now that we know we're going to do that. See, the problem with Mary Sue's is oftentimes there's just no challenge, there's no conflict, which is what makes stories interesting. But Millar, that's what he does. Like, I'm going to throw it in, and we're still going to make it challenging and interesting. And the pacing, he shows off his pacing. Now, I'm not really going to spoil this book. I'm going to show you some pages here. I think it's worth reading and getting these reveals. If you're kind of curious more on the details of story, go back. You can watch my videos of the first 5 and see how that played out. But just like I said, imagine like an action film, like a Die Hard or any of these type of, and the pacing and the beats that it hits, it's really cool. If you are into that sort of thing, if you want a comic that's not in any way bloated with decompressed writing, that's what you're going to get with Mark Millar in most cases, and Prodigy for sure. This is a thrill ride. This is super fun. It's not a massive character drama. We're not getting into this whole history and emotional, like, and those are positive things. Like, believe me, they have their place. This is just about the action and the thrills and just putting you into places that are obscenely extreme and absurd, like something that can only exist in comics and movies, right? You know, and that's what makes it the spectacle. Mark has a lot of fun with it, and I highly recommend it. It's not the greatest comic of the year. I'm not going to try to sell you on that, but it's extremely fun. It's worth $3.99, especially if you read the original and you liked that at all. If you read the original and you liked it, this is a no-brainer. Like I said, I think I might, so far, actually like this one better. We'll see where it ends up going, but the story structure, the pacing, maybe it's because I already know this character, so maybe I'm a little biased, but I don't know why I keep doing that. I'm on an Apple product. You can't. Yeah, this is the scene that's repeated from the original series. But yeah, look at this. Of course, he's a rock climber. He free climbs the most crazy play. He does everything. He literally does everything. He's superhuman. But it's fun. Like it knows what it is. That's why it works, I think. And I encourage you to check it out. If anything, what I said sounds interesting, try it out. I know from my comment sections, there's at least one person that watched my videos that likes this. So high five to you. I can't recall your name off the top of my head because my brain's all addled. But leave comments below. Tell me if you're reading this book, if you're enjoying it. Did you like the first issue? And if you're not reading this book, tell me why. There's not a ton of great comics, and this is one of them. And if you're one of those people that thinks like, oh, Mark Millar is like, he always writes like the really ultra violent or really just sort of like cynical kind of books. Not all of his books are like that. I understand that. Some people have those issues, and this is not one of those. This is, like I said, this is a fun Hollywood. It's meant to be like a fun Hollywood action blockbuster. And I really believe that he wrote this with the purpose of seeing it put into a movie like that. It hits all those beats. So there you go. I'm not going to spoil the rest. There's more pages. Let's see. Oh, as you can see, I only went like 2/3 of the way through the book. So check it out, and hopefully see you in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.